Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a special episode on FTSN. We told you a couple weeks ago we'd have a special episode on the documentary on who killed the Montreal Expos, and I'm so excited, considering that I'm a diehard Expos fan, that I would have three other people with me. Two of them who are not Expos fans, who are FTSN regulars, and Alex Chiska and Russ Morgan. But for me, I don't think there's a bigger Expos fan that I know outside of myself than one of my mentors, heroes that I follow, just not on Expo stuff, but Dolphin stuff, Alain Poupart. So, Alan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How's everyone doing?
We're doing great. We're taking a break from the Dolphins, which most of us talk about. By the way, I hate to break it down. The other bad thing about Russ, he's a Jets fan. Like it's really like cross, eh?
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about football today. Even though it's busy, we're here to talk about our beloved Expos. So, Alex, Russ, how are you both doing?
Very good. Fans are very good today. Can't complain.
Doing good, man. Happy to be here, bro.
Great. I'm happy because you two said you guys knew the documentary was coming. You guys had a chance to watch it. Considering the fact that you guys weren't really involved in living it the way Alan and I were, it was great to get your also on perspective. But Alan, I know you and I have talked offline a lot, but I just want to take a moment before we get into the documentary a little bit for you to just take a moment to just go back. How did you become an Expos fan growing up, and then living through it until when they left? Like your whole life story when it comes to the Expos, because obviously you're known as the Dolphins reporter with the Expos hat. So please take the opportunity to just share with us what your love and passion is for that logo on your head.
Oh, it's deep, very, very deep. And if I get too much into the weeds, by all means, feel free to stop
Keep
me.
going. I can listen all day.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Montreal, and my father was a jock. And he was great at every sport, and he watched every sport. So that was ingrained in me from the time I could, I could walk, speak, and watch, and be conscious of what was going on. So from the very first game, which was in April of 1969, I saw that first game. Memory serves, it was a Monday. I definitely know it was at Shea Stadium. The first home run in Expos history was hit by a pitcher by the name of Dan McGinn. And then just followed the team as I got into my early teenage years. I would actually, whenever they were on TV, I would watch them on TV. If they were on the radio, there were times I would just be outside and listen to the games on the radio. Through the really, really rough years, my family wound up having season tickets at Jerry Park in 1976, which was a season when the Expos went 55 and 107. So not exactly great times. The following year, they moved into Olympic Stadium, which could not be a more brutal stadium if it tried. You got a glimpse of it, of how bad it was in the documentary. What is that noise?
Put yourself on mute, Alex. He's outside. Unlike you, Alan, where you like to do your stuff indoors, he likes to do his stuff outdoors.
Yeah, mine. I'm sorry. You're going to hear crickets. You're going to hear it, but I promise you, I'm going to be on mute when I'm not talking. I got you, my man.
Those some loud crickets. And then through the good years when the Dolphins the Dolphins, see, trying to slip.
Don't worry. They've had moments. The
PTSD. Dolphins, no. Dolphins, no.
PTSD.
So yeah, the Expos got really, really good in the late 70s, early 80s. And I know people talk about Blue Monday and all that. For me, I think it was more, the 2 years before that were more crushing, because 1979, they were 95 and 65, if you recall the history. They finished with 160 games because they had a doubleheader, which they were going to play on the Monday if they were able to remain only a game behind the Pittsburgh Pirates on that Sunday. And they faced Steve Carlton, who was one of the best pitchers of the 80s, and that guy was on. They lost 2-0. Pittsburgh won. They were eliminated, wound up a game behind. In 1980, they were tied with the Phillies heading into the final weekend of the regular season. It's at Olympic Stadium. They lost, I remember the score, maybe 2-1 on the Friday night. And on Saturday afternoon, they lost 6-4 on a 12th inning home run by Mike Schmidt that may not have landed yet. That's how badly he crushed that pitch. It was from Stan Bonson was the reliever. 81, of course, was Blue Monday. Then still followed them when I moved to Florida in the 80s. And then came 1994 where actually in 1983 it started. And this was, I tweeted this, and I had a major bone to pick with the documentary where they made it seem like the Expos came out of nowhere in 1994 to be really good, when the truth is they were 30-9 in their last 39 games in 1993 and would have overtaken the Phillies had they had a little bit more time. They didn't. Phillies in 93 wound up going to the World Series against the Blue Jays where they lost. And then 94 arrived and the Expos were stacked. I think it was 21-3 or 21-4 in their last 25 games. And then came the strike, which was, I mean, an absolute crusher. And then the strike ends the following year, and then the Expos start selling off players all over the place and not competitive anymore. So, and I get this question, why do I wear the Expos hat when they do the Dolphins podcast? It's an ode, obviously, to my hometown team, which is a team I loved more than any other team I ever followed. A, and B, also for all the displaced franchises. I feel bad for like Hartford hockey fans. I feel bad for Seattle basketball fans because I know what it's like and it sucks. So anyway, wasn't exactly brief, but you asked.
Evan forgets to turn off his mute sometimes.
You're right. I always forget to turn it off. I always forget to. I actually wanted to ask this question before I forget to ask you. What are your thoughts? Because someone actually asked me this question a while ago because you mentioned the whale. When you see teams that have been displaced, and this year they're talking about the Colorado Avalanche wearing the Nordiques or the Nationals wearing the, like, what do you think that should, like, how is that even allowed, Alan? Like, like these teams have nothing to do with each other, different owners, different everything, and you see like the Hartford Whalers logo. Wasn't there a time I think the Nationals attempted to wear the Expos logo? I think there a time, I can't remember, but it's but to see like even this year the Nordiques with the Avalanche, like it's very like it bothers me to no end.
Completely with you there. I find it almost disrespectful. Like, oh, listen, little peasants that you once had your team will throw you a bone and wear your jersey. Mind you, we have your team now, but you will go ahead and no, doesn't do it for me. I had somebody actually ask me one time, "Are you a Washington Nationals fan now?" And I was like, "Hell no." Just like the Quebec Nordiques, it was like wasn't my favorite team because I was a Montreal Canadiens fan, but if the Canadians couldn't win the Stanley Cup, okay, Nordiques go. But once they went to Colorado and they won the first year in Colorado, no, because they're not the same team anymore.
No, there's something about the Expos. There's just something. For Alex, obviously, and for Russ, before I give my little feedback, because I can go, but I'm going to keep it brief for myself. Do you guys have any memories, before you saw the documentary, what did you both know? Alex, you go first, about the Montreal Expos. Before you had the chance to see the documentary, what were your memories, or what do you know about the Montreal Expos? Because you were so excited to see the documentary.
Oh, for sure. I'm a history buff when it comes to sports and how, especially with franchises, any relocations, because we kind of went through with the Marlins where they were threatening us to relocate our team. I remember to San Antonio. So we went through that, and that was even after Loria. So we knew, and I remember sitting in the Pro Player Stadium at Joe Robbie at the time, Pro Player Stadium after, and you were just scorching hot on a Sunday 1:00 game, and you were just getting beamed with the sun all day. But that was my childhood. And what I remember from the Expos is, first of all, is the turf. That's something that impressed me the most. I'm like, I know it's probably hell to play on, but I remember it was one of the first fields that just had the dirt only around the base. And what I remember vividly when I started playing baseball was, how the hell can Vladimir Guerrero throw from the warning track all the way to home? That was, to me, the biggest. I remember Felipe Alou. I remember Moises Alou. At that time, I still remember, oh my God, who was the first baseman? I remember
Cliff Floyd.
Cliff Floyd, 94? Yes, 94. Yes, Cliff Floyd. There already, obviously, it was, no, because I started watching 95. So it was already after Larry Walker. Like, he didn't come back that year.
He was in Colorado.
Fernando Signol, number 18.
Oh, boy. Okay, yeah.
Yes, I'm telling you, it was all, I remember still. And one of the things that impressed me the most, too, how the bench was just like, it was level with a playing field. Mm-hmm. So you just walk into the dugout. It was one of those vivid things. I was a kid. But the colors, the uniform design. I always said after the Marlins, the Expos uniform was so cool to me. And then, obviously, as I got older, I kind of got more into the history as they were relocating. I remember when MLB took over the team, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, why is that team? We saw the stadium. I always thought it was super cool because, obviously, when you're in Florida, and they show you on the telecast. They just show you like the Olympic. I don't know if it was like the Olympic torch or whatnot. And I'm like, oh my God, that must be beautiful. But then now looking back at it, I see like, damn, that's like me going to the Orange Bowl. It's a relic. It was historical, but there was leaking pipes everywhere. There was sewage everywhere. So I'm like, it's just nostalgic as a Marlins fan, kind of how we inherited your coaching staff, the ownership and all that. And then kind of reading into it even before. So I couldn't wait for the documentary to come out.
Okay. Russ, being a Yankees fan, and obviously you and I have talked about the World Series, about being a Dodgers. Do you hate the Dodgers, even though you're from the Dodgers? Talk about a relic stadium. You and I were arguing. Talk about a stadium that needs to not
being the youngest guy on this panel right now. Probably would people would think I don't know much about the Expos, but if Evan knows me, I'm a baseball nut. So nut. Like I live and breathe baseball. I will tell you, AJ, I played at the Metrodome on a turf field at the last year. It was they tore it down, and I remember diving, and my whole arm, all the skin just came off.
Oh my God!
It was fun. It was great because you're playing in a Major League Baseball stadium.
Yeah.
But it was like after about two games, you're like, I want to be back outside. This is terrible. You can smell the sewage because it's everything's under. But I mean, for the Expos, I mean, like I've always been just being a baseball guy. I'm like, and I know normal baseball fans will be like, oh, it's Montreal. I'm like, no. I think Montreal needs a baseball team back. I'm like, they had a big fan base now, and then maybe it comes down to they don't have the government support. But if you know the history, the fan base is there, and that's another good market to hit. I mean, to keep expanding baseball. We're talking about expanding baseball right now. So I don't see why they don't do that. Maybe it's just they don't have the government support to make a stadium. But I mean, from just all the great players they had, from the Andre Dawsons to the Tim Raines to that '94 team with Pedro and Larry Walker, all those great players. And it was a great documentary for me, and probably for both of you guys. For me and AJ, you definitely had to pay attention a lot more because half of it was in French. I was like, if it's in Spanish, I don't speak much Spanish, but like I know enough where I could survive. But half of it was in French, so I'm like, I really got to pay attention to get all that. I can't just be like looking away. I'm like, I know that word. I can connect that. I'm like, I have no
dubbing. You could see that it was being dubbed a little bit. You could always see it.
Yeah, that's
me and Alan could have just had it on silent. We would have read the lips. We could read the lips.
But I've told Evan this. I mean, I grew up. The reason I love baseball is my grandfather. And he watched. He would tell me go watching Ted Williams, go watching Lou Gehrig, going to Yankee Stadium, going to Fenway, going to Wrigley. He used to play in the band for the St. Paul Saints, which was an independent league team in St. Paul, Minnesota. And now it's a AAA affiliate of the Minnesota Twins. So, I mean, it's just I think they need to go back. I don't know what the reason is they haven't thought about it. Yeah, I'm sure it's money. But if you know your baseball history, the support's there. But I think it would be good to keep on getting a team in Canada. Maybe they say it's they would too close to Toronto, but I think they should try to look to going back.
Thought that.
That's insane, man. And just one thought that I had, Evan, before you go, that when you mentioned the '93 Expos, how close they were to catching the Phillies. Imagine a World Series of the Expos and the Toronto Blue Jays. How great would that be?
Yep.
I don't think Bud Selig ever wanted it.
Oh no, of course not.
Bud Selig would never want a Canadian World Series.
As much as I hate Rob Manfred, I think I hate Bud Selig more.
Oh, for sure, absolutely,
100%. On a side note, Alan, did you ever feel like maybe this is me being young, but back in the day, because of the association Bud Selig had, I think, to Milwaukee, right? Because his family was involved with the Brewers. Like he would go out of his way for a struggling team like the Brewers, but when it came to the Montreal Expos, not so much. Or do you find that because his sort of family was tied back when he was commissioner? Was his team still involved with the Brewers? I can't remember.
Wasn't he the owner of the Brewers before?
Yeah, the owner, but But he went out of his way. I always found like it was interesting because they were more of a small market team. Also, I always thought you went out of your way for the Brewers, but you never went out of your way for the Expos because they were a small market team also at the time.
No, he was ready to contract and eliminate both the Expos and the Minnesota Twins until I think the Twins sued them, and they're like, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah. So, Alan, for me overall, I'll just quick synopsis. For me, growing up, the two people I could live through were behind me was Tim Raines. Like, I was 5 years old. I remember it to this day, May 2nd, 1987. Okay. That was the day that I remember. Tim Raines' game in that game after coming back was one of the greatest performances of a Montreal Expos I could remember. I was very fortunate growing up playing. I got to play high-level baseball, but I got to go to a baseball camp back starting in like the late 90s. I was like 7 years old, and I went there for like almost 10 years where there was this gentleman who was a local guy where I grew up in west part of Montreal in Côte St. Luc, which was his name was Johnny Elias, and he had a connection with the Expos, and he has a huge memorabilia in one of our local facilities, and he had a really good relationship with the Expos. So I went to this camp for multiple weeks, and every single day a different Montreal Expo when they were home would come to this team. So I got to meet Tim Raines, Andres Galarraga, Hubie Brooks. Then I got to meet Pedro. I got to meet Ken Hill. I got to meet Pedro. So it's for me growing up, even meeting someone like as simple as Jeff Facero or Mike Lansing for me is like Mike Lansing's walk-up music for me was like the coolest thing in the world. Like, and then you'd hear like Vladimir Guerrero's. It was just something that just touched you. And like there was nothing better to do when you're a young teenage, when you're 10, 11 years old. Oh, what are you going to do today? I get to go to the Olympic Stadium on a Sunday, go sit in the bleachers. Like it's like I own up my parents' house. I have every little mini cup. I don't know, Alex or Russ, you've ever had these at the stadium, but Alan will remember this.
Ice cream cups.
The ice cream cups. I like Cremiere. I have every single away cup where you used to eat the ice cream out of. Like I still have every single team. It's like it was just an experience for me. And Alan knows it was the environment of like whether it was UP. Because you don't go to the Olympic Stadium for the vibe of the stadium. Because you always looked up and go, oh, there's a seagull. Oh, there's the roof tearing up a little bit. You went there because the team was competitive. They were fun. And the people that were there, you were engaging with each other. That's one thing I would tell you about the fans. The fans were there with each other, and that's what made it fun to go, right? That's what made it really fun to go. But Alan, to go back, so because when you saw the documentary, which is obviously an authorized version run by MLB, right? There's been all different talk, but when you saw it and you saw like the first part of it, which is like more the 1980s leading into when Bronfman had to sell the team. When I was younger, I go, well, Bronfman's a single owner. He's one of the richest people in Canada with Seagram, Canadian Royal. There's still there was Labatt and all that. Like, what do you feel like what was going on in the 80s? Because I don't think it really focused on the documentary, but maybe you know a little bit more about it. And I want to get what went wrong. I understand the dollar, but he was one of the richest people in Canada. What was so poorish that he didn't feel like after owning the team for 21 years, that it was no longer viable to own the team in Montreal?
Well, the problem was that the salary started exploding, and then yes, he was rich, but he was like basically, as he explained in the documentary, starting to lose money. So I was like, okay, it's a great passion, but he's a businessman after all. And shockingly enough, ultimately came down to that basically cost the Expos. No matter who you want to point the finger at, it was not a money-making venture. And at some point, the fact also that you're paying your revenues in Canadian dollars and you're paying American dollars, and the Canadian dollar is always a lot less than the American dollar. That put the Expos at a major disadvantage, from the start. Now the Blue Jays are able to function, and I'm pretty sure I haven't seen their books, but I'm pretty sure they're profitable. But for the Expos, it's just it wasn't the case, and eventually, yeah. And by that time, I'm a little bit older, since I'm older than all you gentlemen over here. So, and you kind of start reading about it that, financially it was becoming a little bit more difficult. The outlook's not rosy. And then all of a sudden, as the late 80s turned into the 90s, it's like, okay, yeah. And then I got more involved into like the business of sports, even after that, particularly after that 94 season, which kind of like opened my eyes, and it was like, okay. But ultimately, yeah, it was a challenge from the start. And once the salaries really got out of whack, the Expos were like playing from behind.
One thing I always wondered, though, in the 1980s, before I come to you, Alex and Russ, like there were a lot of other conglomerations. Do you feel like at the onset it was because I never saw in the documentary, they didn't talk about it necessarily, the need for the stadium at that time. Well, Skydome was still younger, but because even though the stadium was only about 20 years old, do you feel like that was already a hindrance, or do you think the dollar was just that bad at the time in the 80s, where who knows what was going on with the Jays at the time, because we don't know their story in the 80s as much financially, but do you feel like if a stadium would have been properly built downtown, or in the sense that this would not have been a problem, or do you feel like it was just the stadium just not being an attractive place to go, plus the financial turn of the dollar affected the 80s a little more? Because they didn't really go into it as much in the documentary.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm buying the stadium to an extent, not all of it, because again, here I go again. Expos drew very, very well when they were good. Like in that 79, 80, 81 seasons, they drew very well, as I recall. 93, 94, as I recall, they also drew very well. And while I know that in the document they mentioned it was like very poorly located, but the flip side to that is, and you'll know this, Evan, you take the subway and there's a station that's literally under the stadium that gets you to the gate. Yeah. So it doesn't get more convenient than that. And if you have to take a 30-minute subway ride, so what? You could not beat the convenience as far as I was concerned. Yeah. So the stadium only played a part. To me, the bigger issue, again, is the salaries went up. And then once the strike happened and, the ownership group was like, didn't want to put the money anymore, and Brochu made the decision to sell off players. Okay, now the crappy stadiums are going to become an issue more, because you have a crappy team because you sold off all your best players.
Yeah. So Alex, at first you go. What were your thoughts? Like, we're going to break out the documentary a little bit. So before we talk about when Brochu formed the conglomeration to sell the team, which for me I thought was a disaster to begin with, what were your thoughts when you started seeing the historical aspects of the Expos? You probably had never seen that before, leading into all of a sudden it looked like it was flourishing to getting into the late 80s, where things started to not look so good with the turn of the economy. Like, what did you learn from that watching it? And what did you gain from that?
Well, since like much like Russ, when I was young, I read a lot in regards to the history of the sports, and believe it or not, obviously, like I was telling Russ before the show, my first passion was like soccer, and right after that was baseball. So as I got into my teens, I started reading more into the Expo situation, especially the 94 team. The 94 team captivated me because it felt like a part of them was removed, like their rightful right to be a World Series champion was removed, because they were the best, hands down the best baseball team that year. What struck me was, obviously, I did not know every single detail behind the reason of why they sold off players, but seeing the documentary, and I'm like, damn, if they would have just bit the bullet. I know it's easy for me to say, I'm not the one paying the bill, but if they would have just bite the bullet and maybe agreed to certain contract extensions with certain players, that team could have gone against the Yankees in the late 90s there, and they could have been competitive. And God knows what my one question, obviously, I'm not aware. Did they ever propose remodels to the stadium, refurbishing the stadium, or no? That was never a proposal. It wasn't realistic.
Can I jump in for one quick second?
Yeah, absolutely. Alan,
let me give you a brief history of that abomination of a stadium.
Yes.
I mean, there might not be a bigger catastrophe in the history of stadiums around the world. First of all, they sent it out to an architect from France, not even a Canadian guy, okay, whose name was Roger Taillibert. It was supposed to cost, initially the plan was supposed to cost $55 million, because it was built for the 1976 Olympics.
Olympics, correct.
Okay. Now, there were labor disputes, some other stuff, it overran, and the final cost, it was somewhere along the lines, your $55 million became somewhere along the lines of $800 million. And that
$800 million?
Yes, it was supposed to be 55. And that thing was a piece of garbage, where you saw in the documentary pieces falling off. The roof was supposed to be retractable. All of a sudden, oops, it's not working. I mean, it was an absolute catastrophe.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think if Alan serves me, I think the city of Montreal still had to pay it off into this millennium. Like the past 2000s, they were paying it off. So, and just give you perspective, Alex and Russ, and Alan knows this. They are renovating the roof right now for $700 million.
But you see,
700.
that does not make okay. Who's profiting off this?
No,
because
they're hoping to have indoor events like soccer, World Cup. But just to give you perspective on this, the reason why they're fixing the roof, and Alan will attest to this, because it's what we call the concrete. And people who live here, we call it the concrete monstrosity. Why?
Yeah,
It would cost more money
to demolish it.
tear it down and remove the concrete than to fix the roof again.
Okay, my question here, just thinking as a logical human being.
Yeah.
The stadium cost you close to $800, and now it's $700 to repair. So in total, $1.5 billion.
That doesn't include the tax. No, but that doesn't include the loan they took on it afterwards. $800 million was the construction cost. It doesn't cost what it cost to pay it off, but they have to take money from the bank to keep on fixing it. Because when the roof tore, I'm sure you saw in the documentary when the roof was falling in the air, they didn't have the money for that. They had to fix that again. They have fixed that roof, and at one point it was a retractable roof. Remember this?
Yes,
when that roof tore. It used to be a retractable roof. You used to go there in the 80s, early 90s, and it would open up. And it would open and go. Then it would be a beautiful 80-degree day in the month of May. You'd look up, and you look at a roof. Like it was like you were like, look at what happened to Tropicana Field in Tampa.
Yes,
that's the problem.
That's the problem.
It's like it was literally you were in this beautiful day. You want to go to an outdoor stadium, and it was closed.
And I'm gonna add this, Russ, before I give you the floor.
Yeah.
When I always like to look at things in perspective. Obviously, from the outside looking in, as a Marlins fan, I can understand that the feeling of a fire sale. We went through it right after winning a World Series. So that is, you reach the epitome, and then they stripe it all down. In 2003, we win the World Series. They invested a little bit, but then they sold off everybody else in 2005. We get the approval for a stadium, which cost the taxpayers here $2 billion. They were able to get the stadium done. Perfect. Realistically, it's an eccentric location. It's a Hispanic location. We love baseball. But what happens again? You invest all this money, which at that time, I understood they're doing the big money splash, but it wasn't really good signings at the time. Only maybe Jose Reyes. But what do you do again? You break it on down. And what happens? We have a gem of a stadium. It's beautiful. But this year, the fans started going, why? They saw a young team, a competitive team, and they started winning. I can only imagine, with the history that the Expos had, the fact that you guys were on the precipice of greatness, if they would have retained that team, maybe for 2 years, maybe they would have become profitable. Because, like you mentioned, it's a horrible stadium. But when you're winning and you have that tradition, people are going to make it to the ballpark because the kids want to go. The grandparents want to take the kids. That's something that you can pass down to generations. Like, we are the first Marlins generation. I'm passing my fandom to my son. This is the first generation. You guys already had a Montreal Expos generation that was passed on by your parents, by your grandparents. So I can only imagine the short-sightedness. I don't know if that money, the cost of that stadium affected the county or the city putting up financial restraints on a possible new stadium. It could have withheld it, but man, if they could have just kept that team, the history there, and it's crazy. It's like I always compare it to like the Supersonics in Seattle. Seattle completely demolished that arena and they rebuilt it in the same spot. And I'm like, if they can fix that, like you said, they're fixing the roof. If they can make that stadium serviceable again, they can't modernize it at all.
I'll put it to you this way before I give it to Russ. U2 came here a couple of years ago.
Okay.
When people like U2, Rolling Stones want to come here, they have to build their own. They couldn't at the time because there was something wrong with the roof. U2 had to build their own outdoor stadium, outdoor contraption, because they want to have 50, 60,000, 40, 50,000 people, and they had to build something because there was no indoor place. There's no indoor place. And Alan will know. I was at a game. Okay, Montreal is so constructionally beautiful city, but when it comes to stadiums, even the Bell Center where the Canadians play is not well built in terms of the way it was designed. I was at a football game. I was at the Alouettes game, which is a CFL team, and it was a great playoff game. It's at McGill Stadium. We're playing in a Canadian University stadium. It's owned by a guy named Pierre Pelado, who's worth a lot of money, and there's no place because there's no place to build the stadiums. So we play in these second-hand type of stadiums.
Yes.
Everywhere in Montreal. Everywhere in Montreal. Montreal, the one thing we're not known for is construction and building of stadiums. It doesn't jive. It doesn't jive. So, Russ, What are your thoughts before we get into the more into what happened with Brochu? And what were your thoughts of watching it in the lead up to the 80s? Didn't it feel like there was like a real prosperous, like if you would have saw the documentary of the first 20 minutes and didn't know what happened afterwards, what were your initial thoughts of the Expos?
My initial thought, I mean, I knew, knowing the Expos, I'm like, I knew that obviously I knew the 94, 95. I am young. I mean, I didn't get to see it in person. I was born in 91. Yeah. So, I mean, I mean, I don't remember, I barely remember the New York Yankees 96 World Series. I remember glimpses, but I was 5. So like, I'm not going to remember that.
Yeah.
You know, but the lead up was I knew about some of the players, but I didn't know how many great players were with the Expos. I knew about them being feeders, like the Royals were at one point a farm system for the Yankees. I knew about that, but I mean, going into the stadium and even watching the documentary seems like some of the same problems we're going to have in baseball next off season with the strike, with the salary cap. But also, I was, looking now, I'm like, it could be profitable because you look at a team with the money revenue, with the international revenue. Yes, the salaries can be very high, like we see, but there's so much revenue, like you see. Unfortunately, I hate the Dodgers, and I know Evan wasn't happy. They spend a ton of money. They have an owner who's just like, I'm gonna spend as much as I can to help my team win, and hope it works out. That's what you need. And I mean, they made $1 billion last year off of just like off of streaming.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in today's day and age, I think it could be a little more successful, where in the 80s, it's a little harder because you don't have that. I do have experience with I played college baseball with a lot of Canadians, guys from British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ottawa, Montreal.
The fact that you can name our provinces is pretty impressive. The fact that you know it's a province is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Was it Prince Edward Islands?
Yeah.
And then Nova Scotia. I can't remember what's the top one. Is that
Newfoundland?
Newfoundland. Yeah. That's where Sidney Crosby's from, correct? Or is he Nova Scotia?
He's from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
But I know that they had the same problems in 2013. I was there. They got their financial benefits through the Canadian dollar. 2013 it dropped. So all the money they got was, everything was lower because of the Canadian dollar. Also, I mean, just watching it, I'm like, what people don't realize about, and we have the same problems in America about, politicians, is at the end of the line, people think they're going to do something for you. I'm like, yeah, they might do a little for you, and Canada's probably the same. But at the end of the day, it's all about what they can get. They might, hey, we'll give you a little bit. And that's what I see too. It's like, hey, I'm not getting enough from this. I'm not getting enough kickback. Why do I want to do that? What's in it for me? So when people, I don't want to get political, but I'm like, at the end of the day, they want to know what's in it for me. If there's not any money in it for them, they're not going to have that. They're not going to be invested into it. But I really enjoyed the documentary. Definitely had to pay attention. You had to pay attention because they're speaking in French, and but I think in today's day and age, I think with what baseball brings, like what we saw with the Blue Jays and the Dodgers, of getting so much of we have baseball has expanded so much that the revenue could be there for Montreal if they win or whenever they would be able to get a team back.
Yeah. So, Alan, I really want you to give some feedback here, because obviously it's hard to see it from the documentary. When the situation took place where there were no buyers, and Claude Brochu couldn't find anybody, and he went out, what did he find? 15 or so people to give $2-3 million. When you saw that initial reaction back then, that there was going to be an amalgamation of multiple small owners, being in sports and then great into sports and being a historian, at first glance back in the late 80s, what was your initial reaction to that?
If I'm going to be very honest with you, I don't recall that I was very much at that time like really worried or concerned or even aware of what the financial considerations were.
Okay.
like I said, I became a lot more of it, and retroactively, I did a whole bunch of after the, the strike, and when the team left, and I dove into it, and like I knew practically everything there was in the documentary before I watched it. There was a very good point that was brought up, I think, by one of the gentlemen a little here.
Alex or Russ?
All right,
Marlins fan or Yankees fan?
Marlins fan.
Alex.
No, about
Yes.
the stadium, the fiasco that was Olympic Stadium. It was never mentioned in the documentary, but I can't help but think that the premier of Quebec was it Bouchard.
Tim Bouchard, yeah.
And because what he said was like, we're having to close hospitals. I think that's more of a priority. I think in the back of the head was also he never mentioned, and he easily could have mentioned it. Listen, we already sank a crap load of money into one stadium already. You want us to pay for another one?
That's
Really?
Yeah.
No, and my what's the word I'm looking for? My awareness of the financial situation really, peaked more so when Major League Baseball took over, when Jeffrey Loria came into the picture, Barth, David Sampson also got involved, and then to the last days.
So what were your initial thoughts? Because even for me as a kid, because because you wouldn't know it, because back in the 90s there wasn't the internet as much. So I always thought Claude Brochu was the main owner, but he really wasn't. He was just he was a president who represented owners, and he had a little bit of a stake. But they also never expressed how much of the team how much money he truly invested in. So we never knew the actual breakdown of who owned the team. That's one thing so when people put the blame on, we don't know. And I don't know about you, Alex and Russ, but that was the one thing I don't think we'll ever know, is because it was private, who the real owners were, who was involved. We only knew one guy who truly came out, and you saw images of people walking to their cars. But I found that was one thing I think baseball tried to close. To close the ranks on that, but that's what really frustrated me. Is that you don't really know who was truly responsible behind the scenes back in the 90s of who was causing the stress for Brochu to start selling up players, which we'll get to. I feel like that early 90s to 1990 to 1994, when the team was really good, who was true? He was in charge, but I feel like he was just he was just the face of the owners, but we don't know who truly was controlling the puppet there. That's what really frustrated me back then.
I watching that and watching back, I'm like, the 15 people invest in, I'm like, which isn't an uncommon thing nowadays.
No.
Nowadays we see it, but in that time was very uncommon. But it seemed we want to invest in a baseball team, but this is the guy who's going to be the mouthpiece. So yes, they didn't talk about what percentage he put into to buy the team, but he was the mouthpiece, and he was, once it started losing money and going bad, specifically for the strike season, which they did bring up, losing $20 million, he was the one getting the bulk of the blame, because he was the one stepping up, that he was willing to be the mouthpiece for the team. I mean, I thought it was kind of bizarre that they blamed him for everything, that it was all his fault. Let's trash this guy's reputation on why it's going south. And that, I mean, in my opinion, I'm like, that was the demise, is when you started trashing your own owner, or what minority owner, whatever he was. And once you start doing that, and then you bring in, as we'll get in later, everything else. I once that started, after, I was like, it started going south.
Alex, what were your thoughts on Brochu? It just, for me, as being the diehard Expos fan, those were my ages. I was 8 to 14, 15 years old. It was very, to this day, I didn't know who half the owner until I dug. As I got older, you would never know. You thought Brochu was the owner. You would it wasn't described there were how many owners there really were and what the breakdown really was. Even Alan said, no one really dug into it then, because I think people didn't want to know. They just wanted to have the winning team, right? Because the team was good in the 90s. When you look back, the 80s, 90s, that time from 88, even with I couldn't stand Buck Rogers, couldn't stand Tim Reynolds. couldn't stand any of those coaches. When Felipe Alou came in, it was like I didn't care. Just Felipe Alou. Like you woke up every day and you had Felipe Alou as your manager. How lucky could you possibly be?
And
But
they did him wrong too.
Oh yeah,
and that was Loria, right? Loria fired him.
Yeah, for Ron Torberg. Jesus Christ.
Jeff Torberg. Oh my God.
Yeah,
And we inherited
Jeff
Torberg.
yeah.
We
Talk
inherited
about
Torberg our
baseball
first year.
royalty right there.
Oh Jesus.
You fire
No.
Felipe.
Yeah.
You fire Felipe Roy's baseball royalty family. You fire that guy.
I never understood when an owner tries to be power hungry and is tone deaf to what his players want, what the fans want. Felipe Alou is an idol in Montreal. like you just said, you rested well, and to me is insane. He a Hispanic manager, obviously in a very predominantly Hispanic sport, that his team had a lot of Hispanic players, and it was embraced in Montreal completely. And I'm like, how do you have, and like what you mentioned, the Claude Brochure, did I say his name right?
Claude Brochure.
Okay. Me, obviously, being very young, but seeing now the documentary and understanding where that comes from, because of ownership, I had no clue. I knew of Jeffrey Loria owning the Expos, and when they did that 3 transaction, when we had John Henry and he became the owner of the Boston Red Sox, and then MLB took over Montreal, I'm like, what the hell is the league doing taking over a team? Like, and then we kind of saw it after, almost simultaneously, NBA with the Hornets. When NBA took over and they became the primary owner of the Hornets, and they vetoed some trades and everything. Our Chris Paul trade to the Lakers was vetoed by the NBA because they were acting in the best interest of the team. They couldn't have an owner. So seeing all that and putting it all together, it seems like Brochure loved the Expos. I don't know. Obviously, not living there, not understanding the dynamics. I don't know if he was power hungry. I understand MLB was always a one owner type of representation for a team. So, but he seemed to be the only one that actually cared about the team when the original owner, because he was a president before. So, to me, it's always unfortunate people like that get stabbed in the back for monetary reasons. But like you said, we're never gonna know what was discussed, what was the official breakdown. Do we even know to this day, or no? That is closed. No one's ever known.
Pretty close.
Okay.
Pretty close from what I understand. Leading into '94, Alan, we know how great this team was. Like it's just how like the start they had on this team. What are your memories of '94? Like being you weren't here, did you ever come back, see any games? Like what was your memories of '94? Like if you look back at '94, what were your memories of '94 and how great that team was?
I think the last game I might have seen, by the way, before I get to that, was against the Cubs. I want to say maybe late 80s, had tickets behind home plate. And Bob Sebra was pitching for the Expos, had like 15 Ks, was throwing BBs. And the Chicago Cubs had this pitcher who was throwing beach balls, but just kept painting every corner possible. And the Expos lost 1-0. Had like 8 hits. Cubs had like 3 hits, except one of them was a home run. And the Cubs pitcher that day was Greg Maddox before he went to the Braves. And there was like I looked at him, I was like, my God, he doesn't look like he's throwing hard. He's got no stuff, but he just kept painting corners. And of course, he went on to become just this master. You should check out some of the stuff about him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so '94, I remember some games against the Braves. I remember Cliffy. That's where I used Cliff Lloyd. Cliffy like roped like a line drive home run against the Braves, maybe 15 feet off the ground. I mean, it was just an absolute rope. I remember those games, and it was, I don't remember what, maybe July. I think it was in July, and they were like battling for first place, and it was Olympic Stadium, and they were showing it here. I don't know if it was TBS or what, but the atmosphere was completely crazy. And then I look at the box score, and it was like a game after game, and then they got on that run, and the whole time it's like I was ecstatic about how good they were, and the whole time you have that damn cloud over your head because during the summer they were starting to talk. It's getting ugly with the players and the owners and the negotiations. It's looming. And then, boom, was it August 9th or whatever, August 10th? Yeah. They pulled the plug on it, and it was
saddest day I can remember. I was
that was a bad day. The worst day was it about a month later when they came back and said, no, we're canceling the season.
Oh.
That was like, and Evan, I don't know if you can relate to this. No, actually, it's before your time. But that letdown was almost as big for me. The 1988 Olympic Games.
Yeah.
I was working for the Miami News. It was an afternoon newspaper in Miami. We're in the newsroom. We're watching the 100-meter race between Ben Johnson and Carl Lewis. And Ben Johnson just smoked the crap out of Carl Lewis. And me having been born in Canada, it's like, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And then 2 days later, it's like he's disqualified for having juiced up.
Thank God for Donovan Bailey beating Michael Johnson. That was the solace, right? Donovan Bailey beating Michael Johnson. And then at Skydome, was it Skydome? Yeah, the Skydome, they had the two. Did they do 100? It was Skydome they did it. The 100, because one was 100 meter, one was 200 meters. So they did a 150 meter race. And then Michael Johnson grabs his hamstring because he couldn't finish the race. I remember that. Remember there was like a battle there. So at least we made up for that. You have Ben Johnson. Oh my God. Growing up, I could remember that. It's like, where were you when you had the OJ chase? Like you always remember those. I was young, but I could remember it briefly.
Yep.
I want to ask your opinion, and then I want to ask Alex and Russ. Because they didn't show it well in the documentary I found, like Larry Walker to this day had no idea who was going to be traded. You're talking about a Canadian guy who, to this day, and Alex, I don't know, Russ, if you know this, like the one thing that frustrated me is that Formula One is very big in Montreal. It's one of the biggest things that the government and the Montreal city spends money on. Talk about taxpayer dollars. They spend a fortune on the Formula One here, which is now in Miami. Larry Walker.
Right,
I remember when Larry Walker in 1990, when Larry Walker won MVP for MLB. The thing that angered him the most when he was in Colorado is that he lost to Jacques Villeneuve. He lost to a car. He was so Canadian. He was more angry. He would have preferred to have the Lou Marsh Award than he would have, which is the Canadian Athlete of the Year, than the MVP. He goes, I'll switch because how do I lose to a machine like that? So that's how much he loved the Montreal Expos. Like he was a Canadian boy, like born and raised, Vancouver, being from BC. So Alan, when they started trading people, we talked about the whole thing with the salaries and everything like that. The salaries hadn't bloomed. Why do you think that Brochu was so, instead of going to his players, going to Ken Hill, going to Marquise Grissom, going to Larry Walker, and saying, we have some stuff here. Are you willing to wait? Are you willing to take less money? Why do you think he was in such an urgency before we even came back for the 95 season to sell off his players?
Oh, that was a cash flow problem. I don't recall that. And Larry Walker wasn't traded, by the way. He was a free agent. And
They couldn't sign him.
Dolphins, here we go again. Yeah. The Expos, they told him they didn't even make him an offer. It was like basically by them. They traded the Hill to St. Louis, Wetland to the Yankees, Grissom to Atlanta. Was it Salou maybe also, or they kept him for another year? Anyway,
another year when Martinez.
It was a cash flow issue, and Brochu made it's like no. Sorry, can't do it. And this is where they make the point where had the strike not occurred, Expos make the playoffs in 94, hopefully go to the World Series. That's a hell of a lot of revenue that they lost, that they really badly needed. And no, I think it was, I don't remember how it went down, but basically the decision was made that, no, we'd love to keep the team together, but we just can't. We just don't have the financial wherewithal to do it. And then it's because remember also the rules changed. It made it even more difficult for poor owners to compete with the big boys, and Expos was just selling parts all over the place.
So, Alex and Russ, just quickly, when you saw the 94 Expos and what was happening there, what was your, you see the players that are there, and you go look back now. Russ, you could see it. You could know the names, because they were very big. You had a closer. You don't have John Wetland. You may not win in the World Series in 96. Pedro Martinez, what he did for the Red Sox. You have players like Moises Alou for the Marlins. You have Marquise Grissom for the Braves. You have Larry Walker, obviously, what he did with the Rockies. You see these players, Ken Hill, Darren Fletcher, Mike, Cliff Floyd with the Marlins, when you see what happened, the team that they had, the players that were just transferred that helped other teams win big. What was when you saw this, what was your seeing in the documentary? What was your reaction?
You want to go, Russ?
Yeah, my reaction on that is it was just the fire sale. To see, knowing Larry Walker is Canadian, just because I know baseball, to see his face when he said, I want to come back. I don't want to leave. I'm a Canadian. I want to be here. Just to see his face when they said, we're not giving you a contract. He's like, okay, or Javier Vasquez telling Moises Alou on the bench, you've been fired, or Felipe Alou, excuse me.
Felipe Alou, yeah.
Or you're trading a guy to your bitter rival was it Marquise Goodwin to the
Marquise
Braves?
Grissom, yeah. Marquise Grissom went to the Braves. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Ken Hill to the Cardinals.
Yep, Cardinals.
Cardinals.
Which you don't trade in division. I mean, the Yankees and the Red Sox have traded 3 times since the Babe Ruth trade. So you never do that.
No.
I mean, but I mean, it was the fire sale. Yes, Wetland. Thank you, helped us win a World Series in '96. So I mean, thank you for that. But I mean, it's just the peer of just getting rid of these guys to save money was baffling to me. I mean, Wetland was phenomenal for the Yankees, but I mean, to see all these names from Pedro. Yes, everybody knows Pedro from the Red Sox, but he was great with the Expos before the Red Sox. I mean, Moises Alou's famous for one play, but I mean, he was great with the Expos too. I mean, Cliff.
Except in Philadelphia, Alan, when he came around first, and then he fell backwards. Remember when he did that to his leg? Was it with the Expos when he did that? When he tore his Achilles?
I don't remember that.
If you go look up the stat, Moises Alou was coming around first, and then he tried to go back, and he slipped back, and he ended up in the stretch position where he tore a couple of ligaments. But I think the Expos had the best players with no batting gloves, like him, Guerrero, Lou. They didn't need these players who came to Montreal. Didn't need batting gloves. Didn't need fancy. They just came with a bat and a ball, and they just swung. It was unbelievable.
I don't know if you know the Moises Alou story. Is the reason he didn't wear batting gloves is I don't know if it's fabricated or not, but he said he used to pee on his hands.
Oh Jesus!
To make his calluses harder. Now,
yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that came out like, what? I'm also going back. I'm like, God, how long ago this was. Like, 2004 they left. I'm like, man, I'm the youngest guy here on this panel. And I'm like, geez, I'm feeling like I'm getting old here trying to remember the Expos.
But they're never forgotten. Alex, what were your 94, because you got the benefit from it.
Oh yeah, we got. And you know what's insane to me, that even after the sale, they were competitive in '96. They won 80-something games.
Yeah, they always fought. They always clawed.
And
the
then
Guerrero
after that,
years, the Cabrera years, the Galvanic years, they still had Pedro for another couple of years.
Yeah. After Pedro left, then everything went downhill.
Carl Pavano, Jesus.
Oh my God, Carl Pavano. Yeah, you just mentioned Javier Vasquez, Uguet Urbina. I remember Urbina. He was starting. Perez. He was a starter. Bartolo Colon. I still remember Bartolo Colon pitching for you guys, and that was older. Carlos
Perez, the best. I had one of the best. We had Livan Hernandez.
Yes, you had Livan Hernandez for a while. Yes, yeah. It's, to me, I just what I cannot wrap my head around is, like you mentioned, I don't know, is obviously what they mentioned in the documentary. Is that true? It was either richest man in Montreal or he was one of the richest.
Who?
The owner. Yeah, the
Back
owner.
In the late 80s, he was one of. I don't think
he was one of them.
Molson had money. I don't know. Molson had money, but Molson was invested in the Canadians.
Okay.
Was, like, to this day, I think I guess Alan right now. I guess the equivalent of the the person who could invest in the team now, the collaboration, is the equivalent of your 7-Eleven, which is a place called Couche-Tard, which is like a local store where everywhere you go, the same way you see a 7-Eleven everywhere.
Yes,
we have that equivalent in Quebec.
And the owner of that
actually had the naming rights. If they were going to build the stadium, what they call the Peel Basin, which is downtown area on the water, the name of the stadium, the naming rights were actually potentially given to this guy, the owner of Couche-Tard. It was going to be called Couche-Tard Stadium. Which is kind of funny.
Funny name.
Couche-Tard Stadium, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I get back to it. It's like when you had talent and young talent that you could have locked up. Obviously, I know the salaries were going to go up. I just felt that if the 94 season would not have been canceled, they could have piggybacked where the owner might not even break even, but only losing a few million, and within obviously the TV rights. That's one thing that I'm interested in ask you guys. The TV rights in Montreal or in Canada, how does that work? Because I know now it's very, very TV revenue, and obviously the Dodgers kill, the Yankees kill on TV revenue. Here the Marlins were low, but hey, Marlins still made with the revenue sharing and all that like $300 million as a team. So there's money in the sport. So I just felt that they would have been able to maintain that team, maybe for another 2 years, even while losing money. They could have broken even eventually because of the success. But I know, like I said, it was 20 million one year, then it would have been 40 million the next. It's a big bill. And like you said, and back then it wasn't very popular idea for a one owner to own multiple teams. So the investments of that owner was just for that team, and you got to cut your losses. Now you have owners that own multiple teams. Like in LA, the owner of the Dodgers now is going to own the Lakers. Already bought the Lakers officially. So you're talking about a conglomerate of sport teams, and it's an empire. I mean, I feel that they could have been on the forefront, because what I saw in the documentary, the ambiance of the stadium, the fan experience with the team, not because of the stadium, it was one of a kind. They were very innovative in a lot of things, that getting the fandom involved, and you guys saw it as kids, so you can attest to that. Because for me, I grew up on an empty stadium. Like, I walked in and I would pay for the upper deck, and I would sit by the third baseline with my $2, $3 ticket, and I enjoyed it because that's all I knew. Yeah. You know, the Bermuda Triangle, the teal tower that we had on left field. Like, I knew that was my experience. You guys had winning baseball. You guys had a stadium full. But I mean, I wish they could have kept that team together. But destiny wrote itself there. When they canceled the season, you kind of felt like there was no coming back from this.
They also had they couldn't compete financially with other teams, again, because of the Canadian dollar, number one, with the salary going up. Unless I'm massively mistaken, there was no revenue sharing of television deals, and the Expos deal was microscopic compared to pretty much the entire rest of the Major League Baseball. And then for me, it was like, once you sell off all those bunch of players, it's like you lose a lot of the fan base already. The ultimate insult to me, where I completely checked out, was when the Major League Baseball was. No, I had checked out before that, but I gained a little bit of interest for one summer when the Expos, actually run by Major League Baseball on a bare bones budget, actually were in the pennant race heading to September 1st. Whoever was running the club, I think, was Omar Minoso, I believe.
Omar Minaya.
Okay, Omar Minaya asked Major League Baseball for some call-ups to help him in the pennant race, and Major League Baseball said, "Yeah, no, not happening."
How do you stop a team from, like, unbelievable?
That was like the last.
That was for me like the coup de grace. So, Alan, if you wouldn't mind just sharing, because I know you really appreciate everything coming on the show and everything. When you look back, because I didn't know the Brochu, when Brochu mentioned in the documentary something I didn't know, that he actually turned down Jeffrey Loria back in the late 80s. He actually wanted to look into buying into the team in the originality. When Jeffrey Loria first came in and you saw him and invested $75 million, and then I didn't know much about how cash calls worked and all that. But when he got involved, did you think at that onset, when he first became the owner of this team and then brought in this 31-year-old nobody, who to this day is running a big podcast, nothing personal, and was happy to come on this authorized podcast, like, if you could just go over for me, what were your thoughts of just that whole era of Jeffrey Loria? And do you feel like it was already, like, the moment he bought the team, the Expos were cooked?
Yeah. I mean, it was Yuck Incorporated, for lack of a better term. Well, the 31-year-old was his stepson. So, but yeah, he came in. Immediately, the fact that you bring in somebody from New York is a bad sign, because he first of all, at the risk of sounding very territorial, he's not from there. He doesn't have the best interest of the people of Quebec at heart when it comes to baseball. It's purely a business venture, which is understandable. I mean, no one can be blamed for that. And he also didn't understand that, guess what? The money in Quebec is not nearly as all over the place as it is in the U.S. It's a totally different thing. That's number one. Number two, the emphasis on sports, Evan, you know this, in terms of financial commitments, nowhere near the same in the U.S. and Canada. It's totally two different things. And he came in like a bull in a china shop. That's the best way to do it. And it was, like I said, it was yuck. It was like, there was no way to it was a bad feeling. It's not going to end well. And then he wanted what's the word I'm looking for? Unreasonable amounts of money for television rights. And he wound up 1 year, they didn't even have French radio rights.
We couldn't watch a game. We couldn't watch a game.
Yeah. Like, really?
Alex and Russ, in order to see a game.
How is that possible? I mean, now we're going through with streaming services at times, but how is that possible? How can you not watch a local game in local channels?
He wanted to compete because that's why I want to ask Alan also, and I want to ask you about. Did it seem like when he bought the team, he may have had already something in place with Major League Baseball of try to save the team in Montreal? If you don't, we'll take care of you. Because he tried to buy other teams, invest in other teams, in other places also. Like if you could try to save this team, if it doesn't work out, we'll make you whole somewhere else.
It wouldn't be. I had never seen reporting to that effect. But if you were to tell me, would I dismiss it as a possibility? Hell no, I wouldn't dismiss it as a possibility.
Because what did he sell the Marlins for? What did he sell the Marlins for? Over $1 billion?
One.
Yeah, he made a lot of money with completely swindling the city of Miami on that deal.
On the stadium deal.
This is where David Sampson, by the way, his podcast he's an excellent podcaster.
He is.
He speaks very well. He's got very good opinion. However, and no, he's not the ultimate bad guy in this Expo saga. But what he pulled, and then you will know what I'm talking about. What he pulled in Miami with that stadium was such garbage. It's like we're bleeding money. We can't survive if you don't build us a new stadium. We have to go to San Antonio. City goes, okay, show us your books. No, I'm not going to do that. And then they get that deal, which was an absolute joke. In fact, I saw it, Forbes magazine or something like that, called it the worst stadium deal ever
in the history
of the world for a city.
Yep.
And then
$2 billion is going to cost us in the long term.
He got caught on a microphone at a Chamber of Commerce event talking about how he swindled and laughing about how he pulled the wool over the eyes. I mean, that's a bad look on David Sampson. That's some stench that's hard to come off. But
and we knew Laura was going to sell because he had a clause. He had to own the team after the stadium opened, I think for like 10 years or somewhat, or if not, he had to pay a penalty or percentage if he sold the team earlier. So the moment he was able to sell, automatically it went up for sale.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I really appreciate everyone watching. It's an hour in. We really appreciate it. Don't forget, right after this, we're going to be following up the recap of the World Series. There's a lot going on this network today. We have the Hurricanes. Talk about a team poo-pooing it right now. Oh, my God. Miami sports, something wrong with the pheromones inside of Hard Rock right now. Holy crap. We also have Vince Talk today, which is also going on, talking about the trade deadline and what's going on there, which I'm sure Alan has nothing to talk about tomorrow. Alan's not going to have anything to do tomorrow. Nothing to do tomorrow. By the way, Alan, I just want to let you know, and I think all three of us can attest to it, Alex and I, you are by far, and we're not just lip service. You put so much effort. What you do on Miami Dolphins on SI, kudos to you, Dante Connelly, and all your others. You guys do a phenomenal job. You're the best podcast out there. And I don't know how you put up with those guys.
Take their word for that on the Dolphins.
No, he's phenomenal.
I don't read much Dolphins only news, but I'll take their word.
He's a Jets fan. Yeah. He's a Jets fan.
By the way,
got a bone to pick with you. Get your head coach in line with this garbage about I know who my quarterback's going to be, but I'm not telling you. Seriously.
I mean. I really love it.
He's upset
I don't
the
want
gamblers.
I can go on. I love Aaron Glenn. I think it's really tough, and you guys probably know with the Dolphins, our owner is not very good.
No.
But
that's garbage. I'm sorry. That's garbage.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk. I could go on for days. We're talking.
Yeah, we'll do that later on. Yeah. By the way, just FYI, just a side note, because I know Alan does this. Does sometimes you connect with the reporters from the other teams. Right now in our fantasy pool, Alex, one of the leaders is Anton Staley. So we have Anton Staley in our actual fantasy pool with us. That's cool.
Antoine, who very often sports an Expos hat.
Yeah, it's so funny. He's a Jet. He follows the Jets, and he's beating because he's with a bunch of us in the group of like 30, 40 people.
Okay.
Mostly Dolphin fans, but we have people from other networks, and it's really, really cool. He's actually winning our fantasy pool. So it's like, no, so overall, I want to get both of your perspective, all three of your perspective before we close it out. When you look at this documentary, maybe you already had your mind made up. Do you blame Brochu? Do you blame Lucy? Do you blame the government? Do you blame Loria? Do you blame Bugsy? Like, do you think it's amalgamation of everything? Like, when you look back and you say, who actually truly was the main culprit that caused the Expos to leave Montreal? Where do you have to like? Where's your anger or sadness lean towards? Like, who's it pushed towards? You find it.
The answer is yes. No, I don't know that there's a pure true villain. I think there was just a lack of financial wherewithal and no really deep pocket guy able and willing to step forward and say, I'm going to assume the financial responsibility. And it's like, it's easy. I don't blame Bouchard in the least. If we want to be honest about it, devoting more money to stadium, again, when he's talking about having to close hospitals, you can't justify that. Jeffrey Loria did some things that weren't kosher, but he's a businessman. Samson was kind of part of the same deal. Curl Busher, the same deal. The group of owners. I don't have a lot of anger towards anybody in particular so much as it's just a lot of sadness at the whole circumstances in the situation. And where Major League Baseball, again, had revenue sharing back then, as opposed to waiting until whenever the hell it was that they had it, maybe Montreal could have survived. But economically, they started behind the 8 ball like insanely.
Russ, being the baseball aficionado that you are, in a story, you see what's going on in Tampa, you see what goes on in Florida, in Miami. What was your takeaway from? Where do you lay the blame? Since it's a very unbiased, since you never were really an Expos fan, but you're really just a lover of baseball. More, you probably have as much history of baseball than all of us. Like, it's just, you love it. He knew, by the way, Alan, like I did him on another podcast, this man can give you the life story of Trey Savage. Like, did he tell you where he went to school, who he was best friends with? It's pretty amazing.
He didn't have his stuff in Game 7, though. It was that really sad.
They all did, but they learned it. Because you know what Russ said? He said in the preview, the Dodgers are the Yankees. If you can't keep them can't keep them in the ballpark, they're a home run team. And how did they win the World Series? The Jays. We're going to talk about this. All on the home run ball. No home run ball, no win.
Yeah, but Nevada run Miguel Rojos, that was insane, man. That was insane.
Yeah.
36-year-old, he'll never live that down.
How else they won? Because the Blue Jays twice in the 9th and 11th inning had a runner on third base with 1 out, couldn't get the ball out of the infield.
If you want to take down the top dog, you gotta be able to hit the knockout. You can't leave runners on. You have to have a knockout punch. The Dodgers were struggling, but with that lineup, they're too good to struggle for too long.
Miguel Rojas. I mean,
Miguel Rojas.
Nobody said that. I said Will Smith. I was talking to one of my Dodgers friends. He's like, "Oh, the Waco Tani." I'm like, I don't want to see Will Smith. I think Will Smith. I'm like, and he obviously.
No. I didn't want to see Jeff. Who didn't I want to see Russ all season? Who didn't I trust?
Jeff Hoffman.
Jeff Hoffman.
Right after that, but I didn't know. I checked out for a second. I was like, "Are you talking to me or Alex?"
Yeah, no. So, what was when you look at the documentary?
I heard the Yosemite.
Who do you blame? Who do you blame?
I think I like Alan said. I don't blame one person. I think there was a myriad of problems that was going on. When the strike happened, that definitely hurt big time because they probably wouldn't have ended up winning the World Series in 94, 95. I think watching the documentary, the other 15 owners they had bashing Bruchot, if I say his name correctly.
Brochu, there you go.
Brochu avec un French accent. Brochu.
I think that when I was like, if it wasn't 94, 95, I'm like, that's once you start blaming the guy who's willing to step up, it's starting to go south. And then Loria, I mean, if you know anything about him, was wanting to get into baseball for a long time, and that was his way to get in. And even his stepson said he didn't care. He's going to fire people. He wants to get the guys he wants it. So and I mean I know you guys were talking about the Marlins. I'm from California, so we got the Chargers, and they needed a new stadium bad, Qualcomm, and they literally tried to snap. It was a terrible stadium, but they tried to slap the city of San Diego, Dean Spanos, with a massive tax bill. And they're like, F you. We're not doing that. And he was like, I'm just going to take it to LA. Now, nobody in LA gives a shit about the Chargers. They're a San Diego team, but I mean, like, I'm proud of the San Diego people. Like, if you're really going to slap this on us, like, you can just leave. But I mean, I think Loria, it was a myriad of problems, from the strike, losing that much money, not having as much backing from the government at the time, the revenue sharing not being there, which would have been there. I think it was like 2000 to 2001, after the Yankees won their third World Series. They hit the luxury tax, so
you had to throw that in there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Conveniently, after the Yankees won their third
World Series.
Hey,
on the back of the Montreal Expos. Like, you understand me seeing? You know how hard it was for me, Alan. You have no idea. Tim Raines, my idol growing up, seeing him hit a home run in a Yankee. Him being traded for Ivan Calderon, and then him hitting a home run in the World Series of '96. I'm like vomiting. I go, how do I'm cheering for a guy on the team I cannot support? Like, what is going on here?
Do you remember? Do you remember the great Ivan Calderon story? Actually, not great, but tragic. After they made that, after they made that trade, he's filming a commercial, throwing balls in the outfields, and he like ripped a muscle in his elbow or something. On the sideline for a long time. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Russ. Didn't mean to.
I get ripped. I'm just saying, right? We're talking revenue sharing after the and I get ripped. Just a bunch of Dolphins fans over here. Nobody gives me credit. I'm the only guy in this.
I'm going to back you up. Alan is not a Dolphins fan. He writes about the Dolphins. He's not a Dolphins fan.
Okay.
I'm going to back him up.
I'm just like, I don't care. I get ripped on this network.
I'm going to defend my friend over here.
I really don't care. But I wouldn't say blame one person. I think it was definitely a myriad of problems. I think in today's day and age, it could probably work because they have revenue sharing, because of how big baseball has grown from. Now we see Asia, how much money they're getting from Asia, how much money they're making from, obviously, what we saw in the World Series this year, from Canada and the United States to Asia to the Caribbean. I know Alex knows. You go to Puerto Rico, Cuba, Dominican Republic. The number one sport's not soccer, it's baseball. So I mean, I think in today's day and age it could work, but I mean, I agree. I don't think it was one single person watching the documentary. I think it was just once one thing happened, it just started going all downhill.
And Alex, quickly, what do you?
I'll sum it up as this. I agree. First of all, we have a consensus. And obviously, Evan, your point too. We need your point on this. I think it was an avalanche of financial issues that when Loria came in, he sowed hope. So it kind of created a bigger fall, what eventually was going to be leading to the team being relocated. But I also blame partially MLB in that regards, where they wanted to have a team in Washington. And Washington wanted to have a baseball team back after they lost the Senators. And I believe who owns the Nationals? Is it Ted Leonis, the owner of the Capitals, or no? So who owns the Nationals? He owned it. Okay, because I forget when I was still younger, but when they moved the team, MLB was still the owner of the team. But when it got to Washington,
Mark Lerner. It was Ted Leonis, but then it became Mark Lerner.
Okay. So I would say everybody had a lot to blame, because if MLB could have recognized it, there was a market in Montreal. It wasn't profitable at the time, but there was a market because of the talent that team had before. Unfortunately, by the time it relocated, even still competitive after, but a lot of new stadiums were being opened during those years. Even Miller Park in Milwaukee. You had Pac-Bell Park at the time, which is the Giant Stadium. You had a lot of stadiums being open at that time, where Olympics, obviously, they were going to fall behind no matter what.
Yeah.
So it was just an unfortunate situation that everybody played a part in.
Yeah. For me, Bud Selig to me was always public enemy number one, especially because I was old enough to remember. I was already in my 20s. The fact that, like he said, with Omar Minaya, we're in a pennant race in September, and he wouldn't let us bring up players. Like me and my buddies were going to all these games. I was at the last game of the year.
And why was that? What was the explanation for that, Evan?
The ownership of the team. They didn't just there was a rule. They wouldn't let it was monetary, it was financial. They wouldn't let us spend a penny on it. But I blame Bud Selig because I think Bud Selig did not have the best interest of the Expos at heart. I think he just wanted to he wanted to build more revenue in the U.S., wanted to expand, didn't want to use expansion fees, wanted to move. And just to be clear, the Montreal Expos in their first 25 years has had a significant more success on the stat sheet and in the record books than the Washington Nationals. The Washington Nationals are a losing franchise for as long as they've been there. Won one World Series because of Strasburg. Was phenomenal in that series, along with Scherzer. But look at what Rendon will go down as one. Anthony Rendon will go down as one of the worst. You talk about, but Alan knows because Alan talks about it every day.
Bad contracts.
The worst.
Anthony Rendon might be as bad as the contract that he is.
Sports history.
I think Alan. I think Anthony Rendon's contract with the Angels could be as bad as the contract you're dealing with right now, and you're reporting on a regular basis.
Sean Watson's the worst contract in the history.
Rendon is pretty close in baseball. Rendon is pretty bad. Right?
I'm going to plead the ignorance here because
Rendon hasn't even played a full season of baseball.
I would plead ignorance because I don't follow baseball.
The guy signed a couple of $100 million contract. He hasn't played one full season since he's on his contract yet.
Well, Deshaun Watson has $230 million fully guaranteed, and
that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
He ruined the quarterback market.
This is my last comment. You know who I actually blame, and a part of it were the owners behind Brochu and the owners who were with Loria. The reason why I blame them is they put a lot of pressure on Brochu. Dever wanted to invest more money into the team, and then after Loria called the cash call, I don't have any more money, but then they sued Loria. So they had the money to perform lawsuits, lost wages,
but not to invest.
But not to invest. So if you guys were such multimillionaires who had a couple of $1 million to invest in these teams, but you had more money to sue people than you did to invest in your own franchise, right? If you truly cared about your team, then you would have invested. So for me, honestly, there's multiple people to blame, but that angered me. Look, as I learned more about the owners who are behind the scenes putting, I want to have my say, and then they wouldn't be put up the funds to support a Canadian team, find other forms of revenue, go to Molson, go to Raw. I don't care who you had to go to. You could have found other ways. One of you could have taken the lead. And in the end, to this day, though, I don't care where you go. This logo for me it sparks a conversation. It is, to this day, everyone talks about it. Like I don't go around people talking about as much the other sports teams that have left, right, in other locations. This is a logo. You walk anywhere, it doesn't matter. You can walk into any lid store in Florida. You're going to find Expos hats, right? It's just most people it's very hard to find, but they come out with new collections all the time because they know it's still one of the top selling logos around. Like it supports it. It's just
now with that revenue selling that, who's seen the money from that? MLB's just getting
on. New era, MLB. But
I will say now, like I think one of the things now is they do so much due diligence on new owners that they would be more. They do more due diligence on a guy coming in to revive the Expos as they did back in the day with Loria or the 15 guys. I think the due diligence has got a lot better. I'll give so to revive the team, I think would be a lot better now than what they did. When they sold the team 3 times.
Have we gotten close, Evan? You and Montreal there. Has it ever been close? Where there's a reliable or a realistic opportunity for the Expos to come back? Is there anybody that's talked about that?
No. The only thing, and Alan, I know you got to go. We're going to end the show in about a minute because I have one last. I don't think so. The only opportunity would have been, had the roof not been a problem, Tampa was looking to split their season here, but we didn't have a viable stadium. That could have maybe generated. But that's the thing about the Montreal Expos. Every time you think there's a chance,
there's
Alan,
something
last
else.
Question before you go, and then
that owner sucks too.
Yeah, Alan, will we ever see? Yeah, he's awful, Steinberg. Will we ever see, Alan? Your last question before you go: will we ever see Montreal have a baseball team again? Never, eh?
I don't think the money's there, to be honest with you. There's no
even Molson, Couche-Tard. You don't think? Is it all about the stadium again?
Yeah, well, they'll have to build a stadium first before the Major League Baseball even entertains it, and I'd be very surprised. And I don't want one if it's going to be a bare bones operation where they can't be on a level playing field and can't even compete with the Yankees of the world or the Dodgers or the Phillies or the Braves.
So everyone, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Hopefully in my lifetime, my dream is to bring my kids to a baseball game in my own city. I don't care, somehow, some way. If we have to split a season and call us the Tampa Bay Expos or the Tampa Bay X-rays. I don't care. I just want professional
X-rays.
baseball in this city. But at Olympic Stadium, not happening.
That's not bad. Imagine the mascot.
Yeah, it'd be
Of
phenomenal.
the X-rays.
By the way, I just want to tell you this. UP is still here. UP is the Montreal Canadiens mascot. That's how much the Expos are loved.
Wow.
UP's still around. That's the best part. Guys, switch from network. We're gonna be in about 5-10 minutes. We'll be jumping on deck to recap the World Series. Like and subscribe. Alan, Alex, Russ, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Alan. Pleasure,
Alan,
Russ.
really
Pleasure,
Yeah,
Evan.
nice to meet you, Alan. Thank you.